The sun streamed through the tall, stained glass windows, casting an ethereal glow over the chapel. Rows of white wooden pews were lined with familiar faces, all smiling, laughing, and eagerly waiting. Fresh roses adorned the aisle, their scent mingling with the air of anticipation. My heart raced as I clutched my father's arm, both of us preparing for that momentous walk down the aisle. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" my father whispered, squeezing my hand gently. There was a hint of emotion in his eyes, a mixture of pride and a touch of sadness at letting his little girl go. I nodded, taking a deep breath. "I've waited for this day for so long, Dad. It feels surreal." As the first strains of the wedding march began, the congregation stood up, their eyes turning to me. The weight of my white lace, embellished gown felt heavy, but in a good way, like a reassuring hug. Each step was deliberate and filled with memories of all the days leading up to this one. However, as I approached the altar, I couldn't help but feel a pang of unease. There he was, my soon-to-be husband, looking dashing in his black tuxedo. But there was something off. His gaze, instead of being locked on mine, was distant, lost in thought. I tried to shake off the feeling, whispering to him as I finally reached his side, "You seem miles away. Everything okay?" He forced a small smile, looking momentarily into my eyes. My best friend and maid of honor, Lisa, leaned in slightly, her voice barely audible. Cold feet, perhaps? I tried to brush it off, focusing on the ceremony. The pastor's voice, strong and soothing, began the rites. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." The words washed over me, but I couldn't help but glance at my soon-to-be husband, searching for a connection. During the exchange of vows, I poured my heart out. "I promise to stand by you, in good times and bad, to be your partner in all things." He recited his vows, his voice steady, but there was a hint of detachment. The words sounded rehearsed, lacking the warmth I'd hoped for. The ceremony continued, and soon we were pronounced husband and wife. As we walked back down the aisle, hand in hand, I felt a mixture of elation and confusion. The day was supposed to be perfect, and in so many ways, it was. The decorations, the setting, the love from our family and friends, it was all there. But there was a growing knot in my stomach, a feeling that something was amiss. At the reception, amidst the laughter, music, and dancing, I pulled him aside. "Talk to me." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's just—" I nodded, trying to understand. "We'll get through this." But as the day faded and the night began, that uneasy feeling lingered, setting the stage for the events that would soon unfold. The afterglow of the wedding, with all its joyous celebrations and heartfelt congratulations, still warmed our hearts as we embarked on the next chapter of our lives together. Our love nest, a beautiful 2-story suburban home I had bought with my savings, stood as a testament to my achievements and our shared future. The house, with its white picket fence and well-tended rose garden, was more than just bricks and mortar. It was a space we were to fill with memories, laughter, and dreams. The first few days were a whirlwind of unpacking, arranging furniture, and finding the perfect spot for every little thing. One evening, as we sat in our new living room surrounded by half-open boxes, he looked around, his gaze lingering on the ornate fireplace and high ceilings. "You've done really well for yourself, Judy. This place, it's magnificent." I smiled, nudging him playfully. "It's our place now, and once you find a job, we can make it even better." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "The job market is tough, but I promise I'm trying. I don't want you to bear all the responsibilities." We spent the evenings painting walls, choosing colors that mirrored our personalities. I opted for soft pastels, while he leaned towards deeper, bolder shades. "How about a compromise? Lavender for the bedroom?" I suggested one day, holding up a paint swatch. He chuckled. "Lavender it is." Weekends were spent gardening, with him mowing the lawn and me planting flowers. We'd often break for a picnic in our backyard, basking in the sun and daydreaming about the years to come. But as the days turned into weeks, a shadow began to creep into our idyllic life. The weight of his unemployment weighed heavily on him. I'd often find him poring over job listings, his brow furrowed in frustration. Trying to be supportive, I'd reassure him, "It's just a phase. You'll find something soon." One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, I came home to find a sumptuous dinner spread out. "Thought I'd surprise you," he said, his eyes lighting up for the first time in days. "Over candlelit dinner?" I ventured. "Any luck with the job hunt today?" He hesitated, taking a sip of wine. "A few interviews lined up next week. Fingers crossed." I reached out, taking his hand. "We're in this together. Remember that?" However, as time wore on, the weight of his joblessness and the looming bills began to strain our relationship. The house that was meant to be our sanctuary started to feel like a prison for him, a constant reminder of his perceived inadequacies. And while I put on a brave face, the walls of our nest bore witness to the cracks that were beginning to form in our foundation. With each passing month, the initial excitement and hope we held for our new life together began to wane. The laughter that once filled our home grew less frequent, replaced by an unsettling silence. The strain of my husband's unemployment hung over us like a dark cloud, casting shadows on even our brightest moments. It started subtly. He began spending less time at home during the day, often leaving early in the morning and returning late at night. I'd hear the front door click shut long before the sun was up and find it ajar well past midnight. Whenever I asked where he was going, he'd give vague answers. "Just out, trying to clear my head," he'd say, avoiding my gaze. One evening, after he missed dinner for the third time that week, I decided to confront him. The air in the dining room was thick with the scent of the reheated casserole I'd made. "Where have you been?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He stumbled in, the smell of alcohol wafting around him. "Out with friends." I took a deep breath, biting back tears. "It's not about permission. It's about respect. About being partners in this." He scoffed, pouring himself a drink. "You wouldn't understand." "What wouldn't I understand?" I pressed on, desperation creeping into my voice. "I'm trying to be there for you, but you're pushing me away." A tense silence filled the room, broken only by the clink of ice in his glass. "I just need some space, okay?" The days turned into a monotonous cycle of missed dinners and late nights. His moods became more unpredictable, oscillating between apathy and bursts of anger. Conversations, once filled with dreams and hopes, became minefields, each topic threatening to trigger an outburst. One night, after a particularly heated argument, my best friend Lisa called. Her voice was filled with concern. "Judy, is everything okay?" I heard shouting. I sighed, rubbing my temples. "It's just... Have you tried talking to him?" "I've tried, Lisa," I replied, tears threatening to spill. "But every time I bring it up, he shuts down." She paused for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Maybe he's just struggling with everything. Men and their pride, you know. But you deserve happiness too, Judy. Remember that." Despite the turbulence, I clung to the belief that things would get better, that this was just a rough patch. But with each passing day, the distance between us grew, the once sturdy foundation of our relationship eroding slowly under the weight of unspoken words and unresolved issues. Despite the widening chasm in our relationship, life went on. My work was a welcome distraction from the household's growing tension, and my career was on the rise. One afternoon, after a successful business deal, my boss handed me a bonus. The amount was significant, $250,000, a reward for my hard work and dedication. Staring at the check in my hand, a myriad of thoughts raced through my mind. I considered investing it or even putting it towards a dream vacation for us, hoping it might rekindle the spark we once shared. However, considering the uncertainties we were facing, I opted for a more practical approach. I withdrew the money, placed it inside a thick envelope, and secured it in the top drawer of my office desk at home. Perhaps, I thought, this could be a safety net, a cushion for harder times, or the seed money for my husband's business venture once he found his footing. That evening, over a quiet dinner, I decided to share the news with him. "I received a bonus today," I began, hesitating momentarily as I gauged his reaction. His eyes lit up for the first time in weeks. "Oh, how much?" I took a deep breath. 250,000. He looked genuinely surprised, and for a brief moment, the old warmth returned to his gaze. That's incredible, Judy. We could do so much with that." We discussed potential uses for the money, perhaps pay off the mortgage or invest in stocks. But as the conversation progressed, I couldn't help but notice the glint in his eyes. It was different, almost calculating, and while it was subtle, a small alarm bell rang in the back of my mind. The next day, over coffee with Lisa, I shared my concerns. "Something felt off when I told him about the bonus," I murmured, stirring my cup absent-mindedly. Lisa leaned in, her brow furrowed. "In what way?" I hesitated, searching for the right words. "It's hard to explain. It's just a feeling." But he looked at me differently when I mentioned the money. She pondered for a moment. "Trust your instincts, Judy. Maybe keep an eye on things for a while." Taking her advice to heart, I decided to set up a small security measure. On a hunch, I installed a discreet surveillance camera in my office, ensuring it had a clear view of the desk and the drawer where the envelope lay. Little did I know that this decision would change the course of our story, revealing truths that had long been hidden in the shadows. Days turned into weeks, and the atmosphere at home remained taut with unspoken tension. However, life had its ways of keeping me occupied, and work demanded more of my time than usual. With a major project in the pipeline, I often found myself working late nights, sometimes even until the early hours of the morning. One particular evening, after a marathon brainstorming session, I received a call from Lisa. Her cheerful voice was a refreshing contrast to the draining hours at the office. "Hey, superstar! How's the grind?" Exhausted, I leaned back in my chair. Never ending. I might pull another all-nighter. She chuckled. "Make sure you're charging overtime? And speaking of time, remember Saturday? Our girls' day out?" I groaned playfully. "How could I forget? Spa day, here we come." We said our goodbyes, and as I hung up, a thought crossed my mind. With my husband's unpredictable schedule and my late nights, I realized we hadn't spent quality time together in weeks. "Perhaps," I pondered, "I should head home early and surprise him with a special dinner. Maybe we could talk things out, rekindle the connection." Feeling slightly optimistic, I decided to wrap up and head home. But on my drive back, a nagging feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. The recent conversation about the envelope echoed in my mind, amplifying my unease. As I approached our home, the sight that greeted me further intensified my anxiety. The front door was ajar, the dim lights from inside casting eerie shadows on the porch. I cautiously stepped in, calling out, "Hello? Are you home?" No answer. The silence was unsettling. I made my way to the living room and was met with a sight that made my heart sink. The room was in disarray, furniture overturned and cushions strewn about. Panic surged through me as I raced to our bedroom, praying that he was okay. But the bedroom was empty. Worse, on the kitchen table lay a stack of papers. Divorce papers. Divorce papers. Divorce papers. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I rushed to my office, my worst fears taking shape. The drawer was open, the envelope gone. Despair threatened to overwhelm me, but my thoughts were interrupted by the soft chime of a notification from the surveillance system I'd installed. I quickly accessed the feed and rewound it to earlier in the day. The footage was damning. It showed my husband rifling through the drawer, taking the envelope, and then sitting down, penning what I assumed were the divorce papers. Tears blurred my vision, but anger and betrayal surged stronger. Just then, my phone buzzed with a call. "Judy, are you okay? I've been trying to reach you." I swallowed hard, voice trembling. "He's gone, Lisa, and he took the money." There was a pause. "We'll figure this out. Stay strong." The weight of the day's events bore down on me. The man I loved had vanished, leaving behind a trail of betrayal. But amidst the chaos, one thing was clear. I was prepared to seek justice. With dawn breaking and the house bathed in a soft golden hue, the stark contrast of the events from the previous night seemed even more surreal. However, in the clarity of the new day, I was resolute. I had evidence, and I was determined to bring my husband to justice. I began by filing a report with the local police. The station, with its whitewashed walls and buzzing fluorescent lights, felt cold and unwelcoming. Detective Martin, a middle-aged officer with sharp features and a no-nonsense demeanor, was assigned to my case. "So, Mrs. Henderson, walk me through everything," he began, notepad ready. With a deep breath, I recounted the events, emphasizing the discovery of the empty envelope and the surveillance footage. Detective Martin watched the video intently, his eyes narrowing as he saw my husband's actions. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's a clear case of theft, and with this footage, there's substantial evidence against him. But why, Detective? Why would he do this?" The question, though rhetorical, weighed heavily on my mind. Detective Martin looked pensive. "People have their reasons, some more convoluted than others. But right now, our priority is to locate him and recover your money." Over the next few days, the police launched a full-scale investigation. My home became a hive of activity, with officers coming and going, gathering evidence, and piecing together the puzzle. Lisa was by my side throughout, a pillar of strength. One evening, as we sat in my living room, sipping tea, she mused, "You know, Judy, sometimes we never truly know a person, no matter how close we think we are." I nodded, staring into the distance. "It's just..." A week later, Detective Martin called with an update. "Mrs. Henderson, we've located your husband. He was trying to flee the country, but we nabbed him at the airport." Relief washed over me, mixed with a cocktail of other emotions. "And the money?" He hesitated. "Most of it was on him, but we suspect he may have spent or stashed away a portion. We're working on it." The trial was swift. With the evidence stacked against him and the surveillance footage serving as the proverbial smoking gun, the jury didn't deliberate long. As we faced off in court, the tension was palpable. The room was filled with murmurs, hushed conversations, and the occasional click of a camera. During a recess, our eyes met and I couldn't resist. Was it worth it? Betraying our vows? Our love for money? He looked away, the arrogance from before replaced with shame. I thought it was. The gavel sounded, signaling the end of recess and sealing his fate. The judge's voice, firm and unwavering, delivered the verdict. Guilty. 5 years in prison for theft and betrayal. As he was led away, our eyes met one last time. No words were exchanged, but in that fleeting moment, a myriad of emotions passed between us. Regret, sadness, and the finality of an ended chapter. Walking out of the courtroom, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't about revenge. It was about closure. Justice had been served. The days following the trial were a whirlwind. Newspapers and local channels were awash with the story of betrayal, theft, and justice served. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages of support and sympathy, and the house, which once felt like a sanctuary, began to resemble a fortress under siege. One evening, as I sat on the patio overlooking the garden, Lisa joined me, 2 cups of tea in hand. The sky was painted with hues of orange and purple, signaling the day's end. "You know," she began, handing me a cup, "this garden has seen so much, from blooming roses to wilting daisies." I took a sip, the warmth of the tea comforting against the evening chill. It's seen love and betrayal, but through it all, it stood strong, just like you. A tear escaped my eye, rolling down my cheek. "I loved him, Lisa, truly, and to see everything crumble, it's heartbreaking." She wrapped an arm around me. "I know, Judy, but remember, after the darkest nights come the brightest days." With her words echoing in my ears, I took a decision. The house, despite its beauty and the memories it held, was a constant reminder of the past. It was time to move on, to find a new beginning. Soon, a for sale sign appeared in the front yard. Realtors and prospective buyers visited, and within weeks, a young couple, much in love, decided to make it their own. On the day of the move, as I took one last walk through the empty rooms, the echo of laughter, arguments, and whispered conversations filled the air. In the office, the desk where the envelope once lay stood bare, yet it held the most significant chapter of my life. Lisa, ever the pillar of strength, was by my side, helping pack and organize. As the moving van pulled away, she turned to me, "So, what's next for Judy Henderson?" I smiled, a genuine one after what felt like ages. A fresh start. Maybe travel a bit. See the world. Rediscover myself. She grinned, linking her arm with mine. "And I'm with you every step of the way." In the days that followed, as I settled into a new apartment in the heart of the city, the pain and betrayal began to fade. Not entirely, for some scars never truly heal, but they became bearable. One evening, while sipping coffee at a local cafe, a familiar face approached. Mark, an old college friend. We caught up, and the conversation flowed effortlessly, just like old times. As the night wore on, he leaned in, his voice soft. "You know, Judy, life has a way of testing us, of throwing curveballs, but it also brings unexpected joys." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh, like what?" He smiled, taking my hand, like rekindling old friendships, and maybe, just maybe, finding love again. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it looked promising. And with that, my journey towards closure and rediscovery truly began.